Welcome to the Freddie Kissoon Show. Bring it!
Let me ask you this question. I would like to ask the AG to propose legislation for what we call small claims court. There are lots of poor people, to an example you just gave, that they have issues with others and sometimes with large firms, but the lawyer fee is greater than the fee you're claiming.
It is
their right.
Unlike the right that someone has, all of our rights exist in context.
What is the context of a second medical opinion?
Because you disrespected the process.
No.
Jesus, this is common sense, man.
Any situation which you seem to do, you're just dealing with Afro-Guyanese issues. If one, you can't bring and pull the leaders of the African community together, you're failing. And if two, you can't put forward a future, a blueprint, and a plan for African Guyanese, you're failing as well.
Good evening to you, wherever you are. Good morning, good night. This is the Freddie Kissoon Show with co-host Leonard Craig. As you can see from our screen, is the advisor to the One Guyana Commission, Ruel Johnson. We haven't had Ruel in our studio to reflect on one of the world's phenomenal general elections. I'd like to remind you that before the elections, Ruel was the first person that warned us that many high-profile African Guyanese that either were attached or were attached and still attached to the PNC were going over to win. And he named Kojo McPherson, Marjorie McCaskey. Sorry about that. I'm not familiar with her name. Yeah. So we'd like to probe the mind of Ruel on what exactly happened on the 2nd of September 2025. Why was the PNC so devastated? And why, when you check the GCOM statements of polls, I did 3 times, so many African district villages, enclaves voted for win? We're going to discuss that and many other thoughts with Ruel on the show this evening. Ruel, thanks for being here with us once again.
Thank you.
Protocol. Ruel,
yeah.
What's your take on from 1 with APNU AFC to 12 losing every regional government that the PNC had and losing the opposition majority in parliament? What? Give our viewers, because this thing is going to be with us for a long time to come.
Yeah. For perspective, it needs to be called what is. It's the worst electoral performance in the history of Guyanese politics. There is no precedent for it. There's no precedent for any party experience such a precipitous drop at a national level, much less even in terms of parity, right? So I mean, I guess the AFC, but that was part of the formula. But this is unprecedented in our history. This one, just on the surface of it, but it also reflects. I mean, this is stuff that we discussed. That there are a couple of things that happened. One, there was a deficit of trust post 2020, which myself and others warned about. That if it were not corrected, if you had a political machinery spending a great deal of time telling people that this thing that you see is not the truth, and what we say is the truth, and we offer no evidence for it, then even the tribal instincts tend to be battered unwarrantably, because people don't trust you. I mean, a key part of tribalism has to do with the fact that at the basis of everything, I will trust you to act in my interest because I believe you. Often on the very, thinnest of veils of plausibility. But they broke through the veil completely. Then, in addition to that, and this is something that the EU Observer report sort of bore out. They didn't evolve enough to use new media. Whereas the party that overtook them, used
social media profoundly and immensely, and savagely.
And I'm glad you said savagely, because there's a great deal of, I guess, deception in what took place that has only been possible via social media. And then thirdly, there was an abdication at many levels of the responsibility to campaign that they handed over to Win. They didn't oppose Win campaigning in their. You mentioned the fact that large swaths of PNC or APNU or traditional opposition populations went towards Win, as you examine. They didn't contest against Win. And in fact, at times when Win was saying, we are against X and Y, why didn't fight? Why shut them out, which is the PNC? And so they abdicated their responsibility not only to hold on to their appeal to their traditional base, but they abdicated the responsibility to even defend themselves when they were being attacked by this new player that was campaigning in their bases. Yeah, there was no political defense there.
You reference in passing the EU report, and part of what the EU report talk about near monopoly of government information on certain channels. But there is a concept I'd like you to comment on, which is, and we suffer that here, myself and Freddie as well on this show.
Yeah.
That people in the opposition, once you are viewed, they only got to view you as having a bias towards the government. They refuse to engage those media houses. And so coverage coming from them, their story is not being told. And that we don't see in the EU report. How do you comment?
No, well, yeah, see, and I'm usually cautious about how it is that you respond to those sort of reports, primarily because of something we call the Streisand effect. Something is really, in itself, either fundamentally untrue, but if you point it out, the fact that you've pointed it out brings far more attention to it than it would otherwise have warranted. But there needs to be, but you're right in the sense that I think the EU report has a couple of glaring lapses when it comes to, if it is you're going to give a comprehensive analysis of an environment, you have to include all the variables, and that perception that you pointed out is a variable. But even more importantly, but related to that, it isn't just the perception of particular news agencies being supportive of government. It is the reality that the opposition has stayed away from any intense or even basic interrogation of the things that they're putting out. So any news agency that says, no, what you're saying isn't true, and challenges them, they stay away from. And if the government is aggressive on that, this is what we get. But also, what I see missing from the EU report is a very clear, bias was being an understatement. There's a clear agenda within what purports to be private media. to amplify at various stages for the past year, but ending particularly with the amplification of WIN, in a way that you couldn't tell whether it's reporting or advertising.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, it's Stabroek News, which I still sort of held to a certain standard, because I the origin history of it with David Carey's, and it has had its flaws. But you have more than once during the campaign, I noted, wherein there were communities that Stabroek News did not have reporters in, using pitches that came exclusively from WIN.
From WIN, yeah. Mm-hmm.
In which Stabroek News is reporting as if it were there.
Mm-hmm.
Uncritically, almost verbatim. Mm-hmm. What was posted on the WIN page. I mean, at one point, I think they took down one of the pictures after it was pointed out. So you have, and this is particularly dangerous. On one hand, there's the critique of supposed advantage of incumbency, which all the reports, if you check back there's always that core critique. Mm-hmm. It just seems to have been amplified this time. Mm-hmm. But at a time when there is new media, when there is global concern on the role of disinformation, and not just garden variety conspiracy, not disinformation. I'm speaking about well-funded disinformation campaigns that target the democratic process. So you've had a campaign with tremendous resources at its disposal, engaging in disinformation on massive scale on social media, that is then complemented and integrated in what's supposed to be independent reportage on the electoral process. And that did not attract the attention or commentary of the EU, of the EU report. And that's a glaring deficit. That for our purposes, we're a sovereign state. For our purposes, anybody who is truly invested in legitimate electoral management, in elections really reflecting the will of the people, and anybody who's commenting on, let's say, undue influence, they need to look at that. Because if you manipulate social media, you flood the zone with disinformation, there's one thing. That can probably be countered. And, during the campaign, I spent a great deal of time countering that sort of disinformation. However, when that disinformation becomes adopted by the mainstream media, Kaiser News did it as well. Yeah. Right? Becomes adopted by the supposed mainstream independent media. That gives a credibility, a credence to
the extreme nonsense.
Yeah. Because they can say, it is not just our page saying it. Look, and it is reflected in the reporting, but more importantly, it is also reflected in the opinion pieces, the commentary, whether it's the Stabroek News editorial or whether it's the columnists like Ramcharan, etc., who sort of put that intellectual sheen on the disinformation. Yeah.
Ruel, you know what I think we need to do as a matter of obligation to academia? Since I was at university teaching, I knew there were consultants coming down here. People just come at university and they were not doing proper research. They were cutting and pasting things. Now, Reporters Without Borders issued a statement with the state of the media. And Ruel, I am saying 1,000%, I don't think any of those people that issued that statement did any research. I have been around. I've been an academic all my life. And I have never been contacted by these people. I write a column for decades now. Do TV show. You would think somebody come to Guyana and say, let me talk to this guy. Let me talk to this guy. The Guardian London interviewed me for the election. Reporters Without Borders never contacted anyone that I know.
Yeah.
Do you know there is, for decades now, there's a university in Sweden that published something called Varieties of Democracy. And you don't know who their contact academics are in Guyana. And when a retired professor, usually named Tara Singh, asked them, well, who's your contact person? They say we cannot give out those names. You know why? They don't have such people. They contact opposition parties like Reporters Without Borders. They contact people like Henry Jeffrey. And that is what those EU Commission observers did. I don't think they did any research. I don't think they went to Wickford Burke and David Hines' pages and see the consistent anti-government things these people were doing and how it was saturated. So they left that out of their report.
And let me say this. Anti-government is one thing, right? I think in competitive politics, you have to be anti-something, right? Right? You're anti-opposition. And I'm agreeing with your fundamental point, is that they don't take into account the bias of the sources that they contact, and particularly in Guyana, it's a combination of things. You mentioned the Guardian contacting you. The Guardian recently did a report with a reporter who was here on the road to Brazil, and the claim was that the UK was funding in part a road to nowhere. This is the trail that exists, that is being enhanced with UK funding from Georgetown to Brazil, right? She said it with her full chest. This road has been there for decades. This pathway, but she said the road doesn't exist, and UK funding is. The UK itself had to do a release. Said, well, no, our funding is to enhance this existing corridor. That was an addendum, a sort of an attachment to that reporting of the funding to the road that doesn't exist, was that Guyana is cutting down forests whilst exploiting oil, etc. And she quoted unnamed local economists, environmentalists, on a story that was fundamentally incorrect. So there's an information funnel that these people, and it's in part laziness.
And it's part incompetence too.
Of course.
A journalist came down, let me cut you. A journalist did a piece on oil. No, he was an academic. He did a piece on oil and referred to Guyana as a Latin country. He could not have done research. He could not have said, let me see about this country, a little bit of this country.
Latin has a specific...
And he would have seen that is an integral part of the West Indian Anglo-Saxon world.
So a lot of them...
He just knew it was in South America, and he said a Latin country.
So a lot of them come and they go into this funnel, they stay in a particular place. The previous one who came said, this person is a good person to talk to. And usually it's a sort of I use the word very loosely, like the consultant. Sorry, I was going to say intellectual, but it's a consultancy class here that are essentially gatekeepers for these organizations. These organizations, in part out of ignorance, but in part just out of their need to push an agenda, and anything that counters that agenda is it's too much work for them. So, but that is in part. But again, there are things here that we have to do to counter that sort of thing. I mean, it doesn't have to be aggressive counter. It just has to be fact-based. And so I think we sort of stray towards EU reports, etc. But one of the key deficiencies, it did not take into account this concentrated and very in-your-face disinformation campaign that continues till now. The UN report, for me, it's accurate. It says that we had one of the best-run elections
in Guyanese history. Yeah.
Yes, and the end of the day, the test of elections are: do they accurately reflect the will of the people? And we have that. And that I think that should be the focus.
Leonard?
Yeah. Just staying on the EU report one second more.
No.
In the report, they label this advantage of incumbency, and they mention the opening up of hospitals and all these kinds of things. And in my view, a simple Google search about when hospitals were open anytime in the past, whether it's Bornholm, whether it's Hoyt, whether it's Jagdeo, will show that parties have a plan, and sometimes they open things, it's working, but they commission it closer to election. It's a standard practice in Guyana all our lives.
But forget it.
Our lives.
But there is no such thing in political theory ever in the past as something called electoral incumbency advantage. If there is, it could be more observed in Europe, where they trip over each other during election to knock immigrants. When an election comes on in any EU country, you know what's the horse they beat? The immigration. They try to get and there are policies in the incumbent government that tightens immigration.
Yeah. And the second angle to that, before you comment, is that they also fail to report that every party that has occupied the seat of government has shown some favorable, for example, the comment by Ramjatan. A simple Google will show you Ramjatan said, whatever. And he was vice president. Yeah.
But,
right?
Yeah, but I'd say outside of...
These people don't do their work.
But you raise something that sort of contradicts perhaps even the point you're making. But in the past, in the sense that many of the projects, let's take for the bridge, for example, right? The bridge was announced as almost completed, etc. Right? Just before elections. But the bridge was built for years.
Yes. Yeah.
The hospitals didn't appear out of thin air. They were commissioned way before the elections. All these things are on specific timelines. There's stuff that happens after. There's stuff that... So... to say that there's a incumbency advantage, that there's a deliberate, there's always they do these projects just before elections. That's what they were told. Implies that there is projects that are whipped out of thin air, as opposed to ongoing projects. And let's say, for example, that there have been announcements. Let's say the cash grant, for example. I think they might have used that as well. Cash grant was announced late last year, I believe, and implemented late last year. Before elections were called, before there was a date for elections, there was an expected date. If we were to take this logic, when does the moratorium start to say that whole projects, and it does make sense. You don't stop.
But there's no such thing in Guyanese administration of the country. There's no such thing. But do you have a government? I'm putting this question out to my co-host too. Do you have a government that when an election is due, the cabinet of that government says, we have to stop spending? Does that exist in the real world? In Guyana, it should have existed when there was that vote of no confidence because you are now
out,
literally out of government, and your only responsibility is to hold an election. So you should not start any new project. But if once a project is ongoing, it has to be continued. It's just common sense.
Yeah, once
that would be the only exception.
Once I think Parliament is dissolved. That is the go slow period.
Well, I'm sure people would like to hear your thoughts on what happened to Nigel Hughes. I mean, he got less. Amanzo Walton didn't get the 6,000 for a seat.
Yeah, well.
But even Amanzo Walton got more than Nigel Hughes. I mean,
it's a very layered thing.
How did Hughes perform so disastrously?
Well, one, I mean, you have to be fair to him. The entire coalition performed disastrously, right? The AFC, however, never had a base. The AFC had occupied a swing space that was based primarily in trust. The deficit of trust, therefore, that impacted the coalition as a whole would have inordinately impacted the AFC. There's one. However, part of Hughes' failure is that he has this messianic complex, and you see it in Terrance Campbell too. And if you have a messiah complex, you don't believe that you need to campaign. You don't believe that you need to do hard work. You believe that this thing is gifted to you by destiny or by the ancestors. And
entitlement is the word.
And so it will flutter into your lap. And so I think the signs were ignored. Now, that said, I think they knew beforehand that they were failing. They deliberately didn't contest the local government elections because that would have been a pre-indicator of performance in the overall elections. The result was a failure of Hughes, but it's also a failure of the AFC as a machinery beyond the leadership. And then, of course, you had the defections and so. But fundamentally, they knew what was the issue. That is why in the lead up to elections, there were attempts to essentially decapitate the PNC and put this artificial head of the AFC onto the PNC body. The irony is that it has now successfully happened post-elections. In that you have this
Campbell.
this theater of Terrance Campbell being the leader of the shadow opposition, which doesn't exist. Right?
It exists now. Shadow opposition.
The shadow of the shadow.
Yeah.
But it's theater. It's but it is effectively, and this is why the questions of membership, etc., are being ignored and shunted aside. Campbell started off the year as being the AFC's consensus candidate, which itself is a sort of contradiction in terms. Now he is now the leader, again.
The parliamentary leader of the PNC.
Which, again, doesn't exist. They're all backbenchers, right? Of equal standing in parliament. And now heading a PNC slate, and he's now saying, I have always been green, which means he's always been PNC. And there's no clear PNC leadership. Norton has disappeared.
But if he's always been PNC, he's a founding member of ANUG.
And
it just shows the guy is flip-flopping. It just shows that he's a flip-flopper. Yeah, that's all.
We interviewed Ram Karan, and Ram Karan told us he was one of the initial.
Oh, yeah. And then it was the rise and all of the... But again, it goes to... And this is, I guess, the overall realm of what we're dealing with. the bar has been set so low for credibility in opposition politics, right? I mean, I just spent part of the morning basically schooling Ganesh Maipal, who claimed that he had inside sources that the cabinet outreach that happened over Thursday and Friday, that on Friday morning at 2 a.m., there was no cabinet outreach and that it was just theater. Now, I'm saying I was there. I had about 3 hours sleep between Thursday morning early and Friday afternoon. At 4 a.m., I was at Albion complex where the meeting was held. Around 4 a.m. is when I left. Cabinet members, parliamentarians, and government advisors, presidential advisors were there up until 3 a.m. working. Having left Albion Sport, there's a sports ground for a cricket match. You have the senior person above Campbell, functionally and experientially, who's an APN, the APNU parliamentary representation, basically pushing a lie that this meeting didn't happen and it was theater and it was done earlier, and it was just videos were just pushed to show that it was happening, and it's insane. This is verifiable stuff. You have multiple, you have evidence, and you have people who are there saying, yes, it happened. But that is where we are, in which you have this sort of, I think the Americans call it this post-truth political space, in which political machinery is essentially gaslighting its supporters, even in the face of overwhelming evidence otherwise. And they've sort of wholesale exported that to win. So when you have a clear, not even the EU report has doubted the credibility of the result of the elections. The UN has said that these elections are the best run, and they effectively represent the will of the people. Then you have the WIN leader saying recently that they do not.
That he won the election.
That he won the election.
He got more than 35 seats.
There's no evidence presented. There's no SOPs presented today. There's no evidence presented.
Well, I just like to inform you, the latest addition to that is Dexter Todd. He said the election was not fair.
And not even a sham election petition self. You know.
No. And so, and again, for me, that is the sort of dangerous attack on democracy, the undermining of belief in the institutions, even though these institutional mechanisms say this thing has been transparent and has reflected the will of the people. You could debate all you want about this moot thing about advantage of incumbency and etc. What you cannot debate is that the outcome of the reflections reflect when somebody went in the booth, they made a vote. The vote that's been recorded throughout the country accurately reflects that.
Ruel, is it possible we're witnessing the disappearance of the PNC? I mean, you have to start somewhere to resuscitate. I have looked at Campbell in interviews. I've seen what Campbell has written. And Campbell comes across as somebody in the gutter. I don't know if you know. He put a Facebook post with him sitting in a very nice chair. It reminds me of a...
I remember.
And then he said, "This is me." And he has you and him in ordinary clothes next to him.
Yeah.
You know what immense ego tripping that is? And people in politics don't do that. He was actually saying, I'm a more presentable human than these two. I taught this young man at UG, and I knew he had a future.
Listen,
I'm not surprised at what he's become. Terrance Campbell can't match this man's integrity.
Listen, I used to get to youth from Tokyo Terrace. Right? I grew up in a range house. There is no time that you will ever see me, except I'm parodying somebody, posting nice clothes or thing as a way of differentiating myself.
You got a Freudian problem there when you do that.
No. There's no point that I.
When a person does that, there's a Freudian problem.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course. But the test of and I'm not a political leader, but the test of political competence has to do with how you understand the fundamental systems of governance. Not how you pose off in a chair.
Yeah.
Right? And throw snide remarks. There's nothing that has been shown from any of the new. I mean, they were I think yesterday or today. Can't remember. I think yesterday, commemorating the passing or the life of Winston Murray, who was one of the most brilliant men I've ever met, and who was a person of integrity, very old school, etc., and a sort of anomaly of himself in the PNC, right? Freddie might seem to have some disagreement with my assessment of Murray.
No, man, that's your analysis.
Right? But
I liked Winston Murray.
Oh yeah,
I spent many hours jogging with him across the Harbour Bridge, and he told me a lot of things.
Exactly. Now, you compare Murray with what exists today, and Murray, if you ever saw Murray in Parliament, if you check back his parliamentary presentations, etc., he's a keen, incisive mind.
Yeah.
That doesn't exist by any measure today in the PNC. It certainly doesn't exist in Campbell. I mean, last week, between the AG and I, we had to spend time saying this thing that you're saying with your ability to present this law in Parliament and something that you have before the court will not happen because of what exists in parliamentary rules and parliamentary precedent. The man went and dig up some AI something, and then when it was pointed out that was that was with the U.S. legislature, they went to present something with a book, and then you get the wrong section of the book.
And
right?
Yeah.
For me, I mean, on one level, it's clownish, it's comical, and it's theater. The whole posing off in the chair and then doubling down on things that you've been corrected on. And you see it. You said last week it was him and the parliamentary procedure and the contortions, and now today it's Ganesh and all the meetings that didn't happen.
Yeah.
That happened that he said didn't happen.
And what is funny about the Ganesh thing, he's showing that the guy has on a watch, and the time is very, very close within half an hour.
It is in keeping with what was said. He doesn't know.
He's disputing 2:00, and the man's watch is showing 1:30.
No, it wasn't 1:30. It was minutes to 1. It was after 12 because there's a watch like this. So the watch was showing basically close to this time, but it was at midnight.
Well, I'm a dinosaur in terms of experience and age in politics, and some things I don't think a high school boy. They think a high school boy would know that if you say John Jones is a homosexual, I think a high school if he publicly says Michael Smith says John Jones is a homosexual, he repeating what Michael, he repeating the thing.
Oh yeah, so I know he got it.
He
But
fat shamed the minister and said, "Look, it's not me saying that."
Oh yeah, but
how could anybody be so stupid?
No, but it's not but it's not stupid.
You are publicizing.
There are two things. One, it's
Terrance Campbell doesn't.
It's cowardice. This one, it's sliminess, but it's also cowardice because, again, it's a perfect analogy, and even if you're quoting this thing without comment,
it's worse.
if you're quoting without comment, then you are effectively. If you are effectively endorsing
word for word.
In a general sense.
To say it's not me saying this, and you got the thing up.
But you quoted with the comment, you didn't say, I disagree with this.
Yeah.
But more importantly, the source that he quoted is a PNC thing. And you remember the PNC? No.
Yeah.
You were thinking Apple. So
blood always green, yeah.
If you're saying, and it is Village Voice.
Yeah, it came from Village Voice.
Village Voice is a PNC outlet.
Yeah.
You are a PNC parliamentarian. We're quoting without comment a Village Voice article. How how is it not to be taken that you are endorsing this thing that is extremely nasty?
Yeah.
And then up to now, you still haven't said that they haven't endorsed it. It's just, well, I just posted back without comment. But that for me is a danger.
Is that the man that will lead the PNC into the future? No, the PNC can't survive. Yeah.
So the question is whether the PNC can survive. The PNC is effectively dead, and you see the what's the term I had to use to be. There's a migration of a certain type of animal.
Yeah.
From the Titanic, that is the PNC. The post iceberg Titanic, that's the PNC, and that is always an indicator of where the direction goes. Because when you see, they said rats are always first to leave a sinking ship, and it's not an indication of the quality necessarily of person.
It's a keen sense of observation, actually.
The rats are the persons who know, are the people who know where the leaks are, where the fundamental issues are. The rats are at the bottom of the ship, so they first know where the water coming in, and so they leave, right? So the people who know that there are fundamental issues have been leaving the PNC, and so you have, and this is it started since 2020 to a certain degree, but they still had a core. But there have been the openly exits, but the very quiet ones. You don't hear Christopher Jones talking about the PNC at this point in time.
Annette Ferguson
speaks generally
about issues.
But she doesn't represent it. She was on the list, but she wasn't on a single platform that I recall. Right? There's no. I've made a point. There are more former ministers and high-level ministers in the Win camp than there is in the PNC. Former APNU.
Well, Minister Edgell told us that in the interview. He said, you know, which people in the PNC are in Win.
But forget for the numbers. If you check the parliamentary representation, for Win, there is Natasha, former parliamentarian. Yes? Tabitha Sarabo Haley, a former minister of public service. Then you have Don Hastings, former general secretary of PNC, but also former minister of state,
which was the most powerful, literally most powerful minister.
Name somebody equivalent on the PNC's APNU current parliamentary slate that had anywhere close to that functional executive power. Name one. There's none. Not a single former minister from just 5 years ago.
Yeah. And Aubrey Norton constructively moved aside the only person who had some sort of parliamentary power in Chris Jones, the chief whip.
Chief whip, yeah.
Yeah. And move him aside just for,
So,
yeah.
And see the question about the PNC. The PNC is currently dead. It's a husk.
There's a word I little hesitant to use.
Please
which is resurrection.
No, I like to hear this thing. Which
is resurrection. Is there a path to a PNC resurrection? Because I accept the death sentence.
There's as much a pathway to PNC resurrection as there was a pathway to PNC victory after elections.
Okay.
Right? And this is something that the PNC at present, and the best that can happen now, and I think it should happen, is that those who believe in the PNC need to start thinking in terms of heritage and preserving what can be done in terms of record of what was once a great party. I mean, I point out Burnham's dictatorship, etc. But at the end of the day,
you can't deny that. No. But you're going too far to say the PNC just deb out. No, man, the PNC is a national institution,
and it needs to. And at this point in time, I think it needs to be those who believed in it, and those who owe their professional and reputational and other existence that need to start thinking in terms of rescuing the memory of the party.
Well, I don't want this program to end, and so I know we have time, but I want to get this in because our viewers and PNC young people and people who are still consider themselves PNC need to know. You said you made a strong analytical point in the interview that for technical reasons we couldn't air because the fire and what have you. Yeah. And so I want to get that in again. You said that the demise of the PNC started with the leader of the PNC, David Granger, who at that time was the president, in that what he did, he packed the government with people very advanced age and did not give young PNC leaders a chance to experience government. And so they were in fact sidelined. And you said the slide began there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry we could not air that interview because the tech. Yeah, but please explain it to our viewers.
Oh yeah, well, what I said, and then it makes it easy repeating. When Granger came into office, now this is one of the first things I remember noting in an article, is that he had, and this is about 2 months or a month in, he had effectively established across the public service what is called a gerontocracy, right? A government of all people. The average age of the current administration, if you check the core, has to be somewhere in the low 40s. The president himself is a couple of months older than I am. I'm 45. This is the president. There are ministers. I mean, I was with Minister Rodriguez, and she was pointing out the fact that 5 years ago she was the youngest minister. I don't think she's hit 40 yet. She's probably turned 40. But now there's Keoma Griffith, who's even younger than her. You have people like Charles Ramson Jr.
Sonia Parag,
who was younger than me, went to the same high school together. So you have a mixture of that, and you have not just age, but experience. In contrast, what you had was both age and inexperience.
Yeah.
In 2015 to 2020. So you had people who largely, and this is both in and outside the cabinet, who in 1992, ironically, and this would have been under Hoyt, and this is where you have to credit Hoyt for many progressive measures. Under Hoyt, those people were in their 30s and 40s.
Some in their 20s even.
Some in their 20s, right?
Burnham's agriculture minister was the youngest in the Caribbean.
Yeah, likely.
Simpson de Silva.
Yeah.
Simpson de Silva.
Simpson. Yeah. Simpson, I mean, he died recently, but he was still fairly
yeah, he was in his 20s when he became agriculture minister.
Yeah. And what happened in 2015 was that a lot of these people got drafted.
Don't forget, Jack Dio was president at 38. So.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Before 40, he was 40.
Yeah.
So you had a lot of these people who had left government in 1992 who felt that they were preserved in amber, or cryogenesis or something, I think psychologically. And they got thawed off in an exact same environment.
Yeah.
Well, 20-something years later. Right?
30 something. Yeah, well, high 20s, yeah, right.
Yeah. Right? Felt that they would have been thawed off. Right? 23 years later. And that they weren't really, in fact, in the 60s and 70s and stuff like that. Or closest, probably late 50s. And they weren't effectively out of government and out of the a highly evolved administrative machinery than when they left. And there's only so much space in executive administration. So you had people who should have been ministers, who were young, who were in the public service or adjacent to it, but who were more than capable of competent leadership, who got sidelined for older people. And that's older people. You could have been old. I mean, let me use Carl Greenidge.
Right. That's
as
the name
best
comes to
example.
mind. Yeah.
Right? Carl Greenidge was an anomaly in that sense, in that he was older. But Greenwich left government and went and got tremendous international experience. But he was the exception in that administration, not the rule. Right? So whenever Greenwich comes back and occupies high office, then it's fine. I mean, he should have been a transition plan for somebody younger, post 2020. We don't know if they would have been. Right? But Greenwich, as foreign affairs minister, was an apt pick. But you go through everybody else. Say, for example, a Holder. And you had people who were completely incompetent in terms of both age but also experience, occupying spaces that younger people should have been, at the very least, been under studies for, but they were not. And that in itself is one of the fundamental operational and administrative flaws of the administration, and that is where the decline started. There are other things. There's Granger's concept, in this sort of Beta Burnham concept of democracy, that it should be there only in terms of this facade, but you undermining it institutionally. But those were that could only have happened and sustained if it is that you had that geriatric mindset, occupying government and supporting it elsewhere.
I'm sitting next to two African men who I want to know if they're suffering. One of them have been accused.
Yeah.
I would think the accusation encompasses you, that because both you guys are working with the PPP government, you are suffering from post-slavery trauma. And you suffering from that was enunciated by Vincent Alexander. Our African Guyanese who went over to the PPP, the answer for that is post-slavery trauma.
And there's a lot of complex answers that warrant a whole show by itself. But let me say this. One, my personal view of myself is very scientific, almost pedantically scientific one, in that my ancestry is a very complex thing that I have to acknowledge every single
But put it short, you're suffering from post-slavery trauma.
No, but let's say, but there's that. So there's that. I'd have to be suffering from post-indentureship trauma, post-inconvenient trauma.
Post-Portuguese trauma.
Yes, which is Indian, Portuguese, Amerindian. But outside of that, one of the key things that, in fact, the key thing that these sort of pseudo critiques have is that they don't take into account the concept of Afro-Guyanese agency, Afro-Guyanese personal sovereignty, individual sovereignty. It says, if you're doing nonsense, even though you claim to represent me and I see you doing nonsense, I can say, this person who, and in my case, who I spent years fighting, this person is actually doing better than you in this thing. According to my personal standard. Right? And I can say, okay, as a person with a brain, and a person with complete free will, I can say, I see more hope for the country as a whole, and more hope for the destiny of the Afro-Guyanese community. Let's say this is my focus, than when you were in power, right? Because when you were in power, there is this image that they want to put that once an Afro-Guyanese is in executive power, right? That automatically means, in this complex, diverse democracy we have, that should be enough for Afro-Guyanese to say, yes, this cardboard cutout image of an Afro-Guyanese is in power, and that automatically means that I should be that I should be content with that as some triumph in this ethnic competition we have. Meanwhile, at the fundamental levels, nothing economically has changed. In fact, they're worsening. The measures that you take, whether taxation or otherwise, inordinately affect Afro-Guyanese culturally, economically, socially. And the people who are making that critique are benefiting, continue to benefit the most from this status quo that has not changed down to you. And the fact has been exacerbated. So the young Afro-Guyanese student who had to pay more for school fees, what to pay more for data, this fundamental thing that you should be working to make free, and as a way of elevating yourself out of, or I think that has to be out of poverty, out of your whatever economic status you're in, education, on the scope of access to data is a way out. And if you punish those, then you lower the person's thing. They did that. And if it is that you're making a case, if it is that your case politically is that Afro-Guyanese are at a disadvantage, and then you enact policies that disproportionately impact the poor, then you're saying that the effect of your political policy is for the impoverishment of Africa.
We've got a minute more, so
yeah. The other concept to that is that the proponent of that thing speaks about the community, and the community, based on their explanation, must remain silent, and they must speak for the community. So when you attempt to speak for yourself, you are considered to be somebody who betray the community. But
these people are the community.
When they speak, they speak for the community.
Yeah, but again, and the irony of that has more to do with monarchical hierarchy than democracy, or even Republican thing. We have been anointed politically to speak exclusively, and anybody else is material of us, despite the fact that we are benefiting disproportionately. And the person speaking saying, "No, this is not impacting me." No, I want to, and I made this point, and I want to highlight it as a point of departure, because it has to do with the concept of ethnicity and politics. And this is the reality that in a field, and this is something that maybe fuel for discussion otherwise. And it ties into the concept of African leadership and credibility and stuff like that. You had an electoral outcome in which 80% of the vote went to two Indian Muslim men running. And 20% or less went to four Afro-Guyanese leaders. That is Rooms,
Amanza, Nigel
Hughes,
and Abby Norton.
No one of them didn't get anything. So that there for me is a point of departure that has to be discussed. For me, I'm not presenting any prejudgment on it. I'm presenting what is an electoral fact that has to have some implications with regard to how we perceive race and representation and politics in Ghana.
We end on that score. Well, I think this has been very interesting, and young politicians need to look at this program more than one time because it's instructive. Well, we have to do this again as One Guyana Commission comes on board and your work in that commission extends. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
We'll see you in a couple of months, a couple of weeks, right?
Whenever I can come.
You were watching an analytical discussion in which Ruel Johnson gives his take on the life of the PNC. He ruminated on the EU Observer Election Commission, talked about Terrance Campbell and Nigel Hughes, and then ended up with, though he didn't mention his name, Vincent Alexander's theory that African Guyanese who go over to the PPP are suffering from post-slavery trauma. Thanks for being with us. We will see you on our next program with our next guest. As I normally say, catch you later. Bye-bye.